Lately, I've been noticing some interesting comments on my Oblivion videos. Some viewers have been really appreciative about seeing gameplay from the 2006 version of the game. OG Oblivion, as it's been coined, is what started this channel. It'll be the version that I never stop playing, and the title that comes to mind when I think Oblivion. However, that got me thinking, are other Elder Scrolls creators not playing the original anymore? The answer to that is yeah, the remake has pretty much taken over. When this channel started, there were only a handful of creators making Oblivion videos. Then, when the Remastered released, the game got its flowers, and a plethora of channels started to upload videos on it. It was a great time to get into the game. However, in a turn of events, some of the community was divided by the 2025 release. New Elder Scrolls fans came into the fold, and the nostalgia bug had flared up for others. Some were excited to see a modern-day Cyrodiil, while others called it a soulless cash grab. However, I feel as time goes on, more and more gamers are slowly flipping their opinions for the worse. The remake is slowly falling out of favor with a lot of community members. Why that is? Well, I think I have a couple of answers. In today's video, I wanted to talk about why the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered was disliked from the get-go and is slowly becoming more detested. Before getting into it, I just wanted to say that this video isn't meant to yuck anyone's yum. If you like the remake, that's amazing. If you hate the remaster, your opinion is valid. Personally, I'm indifferent to it. To me, the games feel so different to one another that depending on the experience I want is which one I'll end up playing. People like what they like, and so long as it's not hurting anyone, which this remake obviously doesn't, then it's completely fine. Alright, going over the points for why Oblivion Remastered is slowly becoming more disliked, in no particular order, at number 1 is its price point. When Bethesda announced that the remake was coming out that day on April 22nd, like many, I rushed over to Steam as quickly as I could. Typing it into the search bar and seeing the results, my excitement was dampened a little. Seeing it priced at just under the same value as a AAA Game of the Year contender was a little heart-wrenching. Obviously, the game is a AAA Game of the Year contender, but knowing that it's a remake / overhaul / nostalgia bait game is what makes it a harder pill to swallow. Seeing what was changed, the lack of new content, and all the different add-ons that should have already been included in the original purchase was what made buying it hard to justify. There are two versions of Oblivion Remastered currently out right now. The Standard Edition, which comes with the base game, Knights of the Nine, and the Shivering Isles. And then there's the Deluxe Edition, which comes with all the other plugins and the minor new add-ons that were added in. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? There's definitely a decent price gap between the two versions too. So, the big question is, why didn't Bethesda just release one version of the game with everything included in it? Sort of like what you'd expect from a remake / remaster of a 20-year-old game. If Bethesda re-released Skyrim for the 20th time, there's no way they'd put out both a standard and a deluxe edition, right? If not for the cash grab, then what? Accessibility, a cheaper option, less storage? Games are obviously getting more expensive to make, and with that comes the rising retail cost. I think everyone understands that these studios have to make money. However, I think we all saw the price tag on April 22nd and turned our heads sideways a bit. It's a lot of money for not a lot of significant change. Now, moving on to point number 2. For the most part, I think everyone can agree that visually, the remake is absolutely stunning. It's the best a retail copy of the Elder Scrolls has ever looked. Unreal Engine 5 brings everything to life in such an engaging way. The textures, light, and movements are a night and day difference from the original Oblivion. However, with that being said, that seems to be one of the key complaints for the remake. 2025 Oblivion doesn't feel anything like 2006 Oblivion, even for a remake. For starters, there's the colors of Cyrodiil. A big thing I've been seeing online is just how muddy and warm the remake has made everything look. It feels like every object in the game has some shading of brown, yellow, or orange to it. While I won't say it's what Oblivion was known for, a big part of its environment was the lush vibrance. Colors that shot out at you as you were exploring Cyrodiil. Deep greens in the Great Forest, cold blues in the Gerals, fiery reds and yellows at the base of the Vallis, and mucky aquas in Blackwood. A lot of those characteristics were sacrificed in the remake for realism. Whether that's inherently bad isn't up for me to decide, but one thing's for sure, the environment is certainly different. Now, point 3 stays on the subject of graphical differences. Another big issue I've been seeing is with regards to the NPCs. This is a point I actually wholeheartedly agree with. When I saw the Remake's trailer for the first time and looked at those characters, I wasn't that impressed. Argonians look like Rex from Toy Story, the Khajiit look like cereal mascots, and orcs look like my sleep paralysis demon. I joke a bit here, and obviously the OG Oblivion wasn't a beauty pageant either. Really though, it seems like the races change in every installment of the Elder Scrolls. The elves are always getting reworked, the beast folk have dramatic changes in every game, and the poor orcs had a glow down. I think it would have been best if the creators stuck to Skyrim or ESO's character design, or they simply improved upon Oblivion's original NPCs. It just feels like these characters are no longer recognizable. Day one of release, I wasn't able to roll down to the marketplace and point out who each NPC was, because they all look completely different. Honestly, my biggest gripe is with the mouth movements. There's something about them that just looks completely off. I think it's that they made the NPCs too expressive when they talk. Every muscle in the lower half of their face moves dramatically, and it just seems so artificial to me, but that's just a personal opinion. On the subject of Oblivion's NPCs, this next point could be somewhat controversial. A lot of people had strong opinions on the remake's new voice actors. When I think of OG Oblivion, I think of the amazing artists that were able to carry the literal entire game. There are like 10 different voices in the Elder Scrolls 4. That's it. Each race and sex had one voice actor, and some of the actors did multiple races. Even with all of the repetitiveness, I don't think very many people disliked the lack of variety. Again, because they're what made the game so iconic. With that being said, fast forward to the 2025 re-release. Every single race and sex has their own unique voice actor. Now, Jonathan Bryce, who recorded lines for 4 of the game's races, can only be heard through the Nords. Wes Johnson, arguably the most iconic voice of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, shares lines with another Imperial voice actor, meaning that we hear even less of him. Linda Kenyon, who voiced all of the female elves in the original, was reduced to just the high elves in the remake. All of the original voice actors have reduced screen time in the remaster, and it feels less like Oblivion. Don't get me wrong, I think all of the new voice actors are phenomenal. They add a whole new level of novelty and uniqueness to the game. It opens pathways for new and unused dialogue to be added into Oblivion. Plus, I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. People would have wondered why there was no new voice acting if they stuck with just the original cast. Then, on the flip side, people would have missed hearing more of the old voice actors, kind of like what's already happened. I fall guilty under that category. I probably would have felt the same way either way. I love the new VAs, but I miss frequently hearing Wes Johnson admiring my muscles, or Jonathan Bryce telling me I have nimble fingers, or Linda Carter saying that my shield arm looks strong. These are definitely aspects that separate the remake from the original. The issue that many have though, again circling back to the previous point, is that the NPCs are just too unfamiliar. They share the same names as the universe's characters, but they look and sound completely different. Take Thorinir for example. He's one of my favorite NPCs in the game. Craig Seckler's performance mixed with the Bosmer's cocky attitude is just too good. However, in the remake, he looks completely different and is voiced by a totally separate artist. The Thorinir that I grew up with, as weird as it sounds, is gone from the game. I guess all in all, a game that's preying on people's nostalgia doesn't feel all that nostalgic. It's Cyrodiil set in the Third Era, year 433 during the Oblivion Crisis, but it's not Oblivion. Alright, then the last point I'll touch on for this video is what exactly does the remake add? Before, I touched on some of the changes between the games, characters, and environment. I didn't get to mention the combat differences. Fighting in the remake is now a lot easier. There's flinch damage, quicker animations, and enemies now appear on the compass. Then there's the addition of sprinting, so the speed attribute almost feels sort of useless. There's now a reticle while in third person, so ranged attacks can be carried out much easier. When the player is over encumbered, you no longer just stand around, you now walk really slowly. There are quite a few quality of life changes that were made, and honestly, I don't see very many people complaining about those. If anything, the chief complaint is directed at developers making games too easy nowadays. The epidemic of hand-holding, dumbing down difficulty, and taking away the challenge is what I've seen regarding the remaster. I've always felt that games should have an option for a standard, casual play mode and a hard mode for those who want the experience. Oblivion has the difficulty slider/setting, it has the ability to hide the UI, and it can be tailored to the player's experience fairly easily. If you want a challenge, there are plenty of ways to make your playthrough more unique and or difficult. But, like I was saying before, what are the big additions to the remaster? The driving factors for why players would want to pick up this game? Other than graphics, updated combat, and quality of life features, what else did they throw in there? Well, with the remake, Virtuous and Bethesda threw in 2 brand new quests that feature all new items, weapons, and armor. The quests are called A Wound in Time and A Burning Trail. The former has the player working with the Order of the Hour, a faction that's new to Oblivion, while the latter has them working with the Mythic Dawn, a familiar faction that the player previously could have only worked against. While these aren't as fleshed out as other questlines like the Collector or Separated at Birth, they have a decent amount of sustenance to them. Each one is a 2-parter. There are new and revamped NPCs, plus the reward is what makes them worth the while. You get access to the Order gear as well as the Cataclysm gear, all new weapons and armor. There's even horse armor for each of them. They're all new cosmetics and add a new layer of visuals to the game. I personally think they're pretty cool, and to me, that's a defining factor of the remake. Here is the issue with them though. The new quests are only available through the deluxe edition of the remaster. That means that in order to get new cosmetics and maybe 45 minutes of novel gameplay, you have to pay an additional $10 USD. I think Bethesda knew that a lot of consumers would not go for that. So, putting on my tinfoil hat here, that's why they made the deluxe and standard editions the way that they did. They probably felt as though sales would suffer if they released the full remake of Oblivion, DLCs, plugins, etc., then made the 2 bonus quests and items an extra $3 download. My guess is that they knew they could charge more money and make more money if they packaged the new content with the rest of the DLCs, hence the deluxe edition. Because really, at the end of the day, the extra quests and armor is only so new and shiny for so long. With no other new content, the game has a somewhat shorter lifespan for some players. After recently playing through all of Oblivion for this channel, I really didn't feel the need to do it all over again with updated graphics. If the devs were promising more DLC and bonus content for the future, then that's something worth considering. But knowing Bethesda's track record with re-releases and how they like to package things, we're probably all going to have to buy the Super Mega Extreme Deluxe Edition if more content ever does come out. So, to sum up this point, the most novel parts of the remake are the 2 new quests and the new items. However, they're hidden behind a paywall that feels like it's taking advantage of you. Plus, the new content doesn't add much to the longevity of the game, and there's no information on if anything else is going to be released for it. All in all, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered has certainly sparked some debate in the gaming community. The company who's credited with making microtransactions mainstream has now been credited with something new, making re-releases and remakes that cost the same as a full AAA game. I think it stems to the fact that most consumers are worried with how influential Bethesda is and the impact they have on the future of gaming. However, I think that this game was targeted toward a specific audience. If you're like me and have played through each quest multiple times, know the storylines like the back of your hand, and have hundreds of hours logged in only the last 2 years, this game was not made with you in mind. However, if you're someone who has never played the game, couldn't get over the outdated graphics, or hasn't played it in quite some time, then I'm sure you'd have a fantastic experience with it. Really, it's meant for those who want to enjoy Cyrodiil with modern graphics, and there's nothing wrong with that. I also think that there's a lot we can celebrate from the remake. This game brought a whole lot of new and old members into the Elder Scrolls community. I have friends who have never played Oblivion, and some who haven't played it since Xbox 360. These are people who are still playing the remaster to this day. As a lifelong Oblivion fan, it warms my heart to see this game get its flowers. It often felt overshadowed by Skyrim and back in my day by Morrowind. But with the remake, this game got put back on everyone's radar, and the community worked together to find new exploits, Easter eggs, and subtle changes. I also think the way Bethesda handled that press conference announcement was simply fantastic. In the beginning, there was nothing more than rumors. Then, the day before the conference, we get promotional art for the remake. Then during the epic announcement, we get told that it had already dropped. I personally haven't felt that excited and thrilled for a game's release in a long time. Another point too, this remake also opens the door for other titles like Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and even Morrowind to get a re-release. I think the community would lose their minds if the Elder Scrolls 3 got remade. So many people would play it for the first time, and it would get the same kind of attention that Skyrim and now Oblivion get. With the remaster of the Elder Scrolls 4, I think that puts us a step closer to seeing even older titles getting remakes. Then lastly, the Elder Scrolls title lineup has been getting kind of dry. Skyrim can only be re-released so many times, and even though ESO is still pumping out content, not everyone wants the MMO experience. The Elder Scrolls 6 is still barely more than a legend at this point too, so I think we were all due for a new experience from the series. I don't think Oblivion was on anyone's bingo card, so that's what makes it even more shocking and exciting. Alright, with that, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on the remake down below. How do you feel about it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Are you somewhere in between, like I am? Please share your thoughts down below, but also, please remember to be respectful of other people's opinions. At the end of the day, it's just a video game. Until next time, keep on adventuring.